Hi, I'm Julie from Thermo Kitchen, and today we're making some apple rose pastries. So these are little apple tartlets, and they can be used for many different things. They're lovely for a high tea, they're great for a Valentine's Day treat, and they would be lovely for Mother's Day. So it's a little bit different, this recipe. This one can be used with the Thermomix or without, and I'm going to show you both ways today. Okay, so we have 3 apples here. Now our first job is to core them. So I've just got an apple corer. You don't need to use an apple corer. You could always chop it in half and just take out the core with a knife. But I happen to have an apple corer, so I am going to use that. So there goes one. I'll ignore that. So there we go, we've got our 3 apple cores out. Pop that away. And now we're slicing in half. So the first job is to prepare our apples for the little roses. Okay, so we're going to use the cutter on the Thermomix for the first step. If you don't have a Thermomix, don't worry. We will be using a mandolin, and if you don't have a mandolin, that's fine. You could always cut with a knife. Very good. And we're going to slide across to our functions. So tap on the home button, slide across, sliding up to slicing, and tap on slicing. Now we've got the option of choosing thick or thin. We are going to go for a thick slice for these apples. So we want to put the apple in like this so that we get a nice moon shape. So I'm going to pop my apple in first. Pop this one in. Oops, that's a bit big. Pop that one in. So if your apple is too big, then it's simply a matter of cutting the side edges down a little bit. Okay, so now we've got our plunger ready, and we're just turning through to thick. Okay, and that's how easy it is if we wanted to slice with the cutter for our apples. Now, while we're doing this, we don't want our apples to go brown. So I'm just going to pop this over here. We're taking these slices out so you can see how it's sliced the apple. So popping the slices in here. And put this aside. And we want to add some lemon juice to this water, and that's just going to stop the apples from going brown while we finish the other apples. Okay, so that's 1 apple done, and we will be doing 3 apples. So I'm going to show you next if you have a mandolin. So again, we need to be slicing this way. So we're going to slice. So I've got it on 2 with the mandolin, and we're going that way. Okay. And there we go again. So popping these in the water. So here we go, you can see the thickness of the apple. Again, it's probably about 2 millimeters thick. And I'll do the other side. Just starting it off like this because it is really hard to start off at this angle. Okay, popping that again in the lemon water. And I might as well finish with the mandolin since we've got that going. Now, like I said, you could easily slice. We would just do 2 millimeter slices if you didn't have the cutter or a mandolin. Okay, so that's there in the water. We'll get rid of our mandolin and chopping board. Okay, so the next step is to slightly cook the apple, because you can see if I tried to bend this now and wrap it in pastry, it's going to crack and break and we won't have our nice little roses. So I'm going to pop this in the microwave. Now it's going to take between 3 and 5 minutes. So I'm going to put it on for probably 3.5 minutes, and then we'll go in 30-second increments from there. Okay, so just pressing all this down into the water, and I'll go on microwave now. Okay, so now we can move the Thermomix out of the way because we're actually finished with that, and grab our pastry. So we've got a sheet of puff pastry here, and I've got some flour. Now I am going to flour this so that the rolling pin doesn't stick, because what we've got to do is roll this out a little bit. So we want to make it a bit thinner and a bit longer. Also going to pop a bit of flour under here so it doesn't stick. And likewise here. So we're aiming for about a 30-centimetre length. Now, if you like, you could actually measure 30 centimetres on your paper to make sure that you've got it exactly right. I'm not going to. I'm not concerned, just so long as we get this longer than it is wide. So I'm just rolling that out really quite gently, because my edges are cracked because this pastry has been in the freezer for a while. So I'm going reasonably gently with it. So you want to keep the shape of a rectangle as much as possible. If you end up with one side longer than the other, you want to try and adjust that. So I've got a bit that bows in there, so I might just roll out a little. Okay, and that side looks nice and straight. Okay, and I think that's probably about 30 centimetres. Now, the microwave has just gone off, so I am going to check on our apples. Okay, so I've put them on for another minute. Our next job is to heat up the jam and pop the jam over the pastry. So as soon as the apples are done, we'll be doing that. Okay, so the apples are looking good. So they're quite soft now. So what I'm going to do is drain them, and then I'm going to pop them on a tea towel so that they aren't as moist when we're putting it on the pastry. So I'm just going to drain them onto here. Great. And then just turn them over onto there. So I just put the jam on for 15 seconds. It hasn't made it hot or anything, but it has actually softened it a little. So what we're going to do now is brush the pastry with jam. So this is actually my spiced plum jam that is on my recipe, on my website. It's one of my recipes and it's actually delicious. In this, made these rosettes a fair few times now for a lot of different people using this jam, and everybody has absolutely loved it, so that's very nice to know. Okay, so there's actually 55 grams of jam per sheet. I'm only doing one sheet today to show you. And even though it doesn't look like enough, we just keep spreading it until we get it over all of the pastry, because we don't want a lot of jam. We just want enough just to give it a bit of flavour. So make sure you go all the way to the edges, because you don't want to be that person who gets an edge piece and has no jam. That jam smells nice. So this spiced jam has got some star anise, cloves, a few different spices like that just make it just that little bit special. And it is actually blitzed up whole plums. Yeah, so that's why you can see bits of skin and everything in there, because it's got all its fibre, everything's completely natural. Okay. So we've got our jam covering our pastry, and now we've got our caster sugar and cinnamon. And pop those together and stir together. And then this goes over the top of our pastry. Just want to make sure it's stirred together nicely. We don't want just sugar. Okay, and then we start sprinkling it over evenly. Could have got those lumps out a little bit better. And again, just like the jam, we want to make sure that we've got no patches that don't have our cinnamon and sugar mixture. So we have our muffin tin. Now I'm only making 6 today, we're only using 1 sheet. So I'm just going to spray that. I do spray it because the jam does have a tendency of coming through, and we know with jam, heats up, becomes sticky, and it can stick. So just doing that helps a little bit to get it out. We always get the rosettes out as soon as they come out of the oven, because as the jam cools, it becomes like a toffee and it's harder to get out. So what we're doing here is chopping into 6. So we'll be making 6 rosettes. So I'm just roughly guessing. Again, you could measure. I'm going to guess there. Now I think I might have actually rolled a bit thinner than usual, because these actually seem a little bit bigger, which is nice. Okay. And now we are up to making our rosettes. Now I'm probably going to need this knife because yep, just making sure I've gone all the way through. Great. Okay. Okay, now we're going to choose our apple bits. I like choosing the parts that are quite red. So popping that on there. We want to overlap so that it looks nice and pretty. So it's 4 there, 5, 6. Now do leave a little bit at the end, so I might just try and find a part 1. So I just find that it's a bit easier then because you've got something to wrap around. Okay, so we've overlapped that nicely. Now I'm going to fold over this side to keep it all encased. So folding that over and squishing it down a little bit. Now the fun part, we roll up. And I love this because it's just magic. It makes you feel so clever because look at that. That is perfect. There we go. So pop that in your little muffin tin and we've done one little rosette. Okay, next one. Oh, and a tip, it's always better to double check your cut line before, and that it's easy to get up before you put your apples on rather than after, because if it's stuck to your paper and you've already got your apples there, it can be a little bit tricky to move. Okay, 1, 2. Now seriously, how easy is that? And how pretty does it look? For something that it's just a little bit of fun. Okay, popping this one up. Very good. Now if you've got some flour on the end and you're worried it's not going to stick, you can just use a bit of the jam and jammy it closed. But there you go, another perfect little rosette. So my daughter had one of these the other day and I said, how would you describe it? And she said, well, it tastes like maybe apple baklava a little bit. So this is what the puff pastry, I think, the effect of the puff pastry is, she said it's crispy and crunchy, kind of reminds her a bit of apple baklava. Okay, there's another little one. So it's actually not even really that fiddly. It comes together pretty easily. And you know if your apples aren't cooked enough because as you roll, they won't give and they'll start to come through your pastry. And that's when you know that you have to pop them back in some water and cook them for longer because they're too stiff. So they not only will not roll, but they will actually break your pastry. And it doesn't matter if your pieces are completely different sizes because that's actually what makes the rosette look like it's got different size petals. It's the different size apple pieces. I'm not going to use that one because it doesn't have any peel on the side, so it's not going to look as pretty. When you're choosing your apples, try and choose apples that have got red all over, not red and yellow, because then you get just a better look with the petals. There we are. And the last one. That one's a big one. In you go. Well, the more apple you put in the inside the pastry, the larger your flour is going to be. As well, it becomes thicker. Okay, so there we go. There's 6 little six big rose pastries. I'm going to pop that in the oven now. So oven times will vary depending on your oven. You want it on about 170 to 180 fan force depending on your oven, but you really just need to keep an eye on it. Something I will show you, the apple tends to get darker before the pastry is cooked. So what you want to do is get some aluminium foil if you start noticing this, and pop some aluminium foil over the apple. So you'll just place it around the apple so that it will cover the apple and not allow the apple to get any darker, and then that way the pastry will keep cooking. So I will show you that once I take the rosettes out of the oven. Okay, but let's get cooking. Okay, so our little rosettes have been in the oven for about 45 minutes and I think they're about done. So let's go and take a look. Okay, now you'll notice I have some alfoil over the top of these two. Now I've put it just over the apple in the center, not over the pastry. Now the reason I did that is the apple around here is actually quite high, so it was starting to color a little bit too much, and same with that one there. Okay, and I did need to keep the rosettes in because we needed to cook the pastry, but we didn't want to over color the rosette. Now to get it out, I like to use a spoon because you will notice the jam does spill out a little and it will stick in places. And that's one of the reasons why we get these out straight away. The quicker you can get them out while the jam is still hot and runny, the easier it is. Yeah, and getting them out with a spoon is probably the easiest way. Okay, there we go. Now, to make these look really nice and pretty, we are just going to dust these with a little bit of icing sugar. Okay. And there we go. And they are absolutely beautiful, just gorgeous. And they really look like they took a bit of trouble, and they're very, very simple. So there we go. That's our apple tarts, or our Apple Rose Tarts, whatever you want to call them. Thank you so much for watching.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to join me on our Thermo Kitchen Facebook group. Happy cooking!